Okay, so Google Sites is a platform we've been using with our classes for some time. And when the time came for e-learning in the spring, we decided to continue using Sites the way we were and to find some new applications for it. And if you're completely new to this, Google Sites is one of the apps in Google Apps for Education. You'll find it on the GNS Pass launch screen when you log in. All students and staff have access to it for free. Websites are now so much more than a place to gather information. With a little creativity and a sense of exploration, they can be a collaborative and interactive tool, which is what we found and how we've been using them. The new Google Sites, so there was a change in the last couple of years, and now we're completely on new Google Sites. It is so user-friendly, so students and staff alike can quickly find their way around the program and create something fantastic. It takes a little bit of looking around, a little bit of patience, and of course, we've included some helpful resources on our site at that short URL. You can find more anywhere, just about. You go Google them to help you streamline things if you want. But if you just go in there and start clicking around, you're probably going to end up figuring out what you need to figure out pretty easily. We also found out that this platform is a great one to help with our grade 6 transition this year, since students weren't able to take part in an in-person transition experience. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the examples. Some educators ask us about Google Sites versus classrooms. That's something we wanted to clear up because they're expecting that when we talk about using Sites, it's as a classroom website where we store information about like homework, videos about how to do work, assignments. And while that is one way to use your sites, and a lot of people do it, that's not the only way. So we just wanted to clarify, we don't see it as a versus thing. We use both a lot. We have Google Classrooms, and we have actually, when we did e-learning, we put since we have partner classes, we put them together on one, and we keep everything very streamlined for the kids on one now. But that's where we put all our assignments, all our links to things. We might put a link to a site in there, but it's kind of like our home base. And then we use Google Sites for a number of other purposes. So again, it's not a versus thing. You can use either one as your home base, but Sites has a lot more applications for both student use and staff use. Yeah, and that's the kind of the gist of the why we're talking about Sites today, and we hope that you'll enjoy seeing some examples. Just going to turn this off. Yeah. All right, let's look at some examples now of how we've used Sites.
So at my previous school, they had student-led conferences every spring where students presented a portfolio of their work to their families. And when I started there, it was all done on paper and then slowly evolved to Google Slides and Google Sites. This is just one example from a grade 7 student, and just so you're aware, I've taken or changed a number of the names in these examples, and I've also taken out many of the links because it had the student's name on it. So the idea was that students write a reflection for each subject for term 1 and term 2, and also link at least one piece of work to it. They also had to complete a learner profile. Now, I took the actual learner profile out because she had actually completed it. It said her name on it. So this is just a grade 6 template that I stuck in. And what I like about Google Sites, you can include entire Google Docs or slides or sheets or forms right on the website. It's not just a link. You can see the whole thing there. And every time you update any of those pieces, it automatically updates on your website as well. So if the student was to go in right now and click on something underneath well-developed or developed, it would automatically update. And for example, also on our website, the short URL, if you go on that, our entire presentation is on the front page. So we can present right off the front page. The second example was from a grade 6 student from this year. It's not quite done given that we were learning at home. But this student has a couple links on there and also included some pictures. So whenever you include a link, the key there is that you need to make sure that you set the publication settings or who can view these items properly. So for example, if you included a Google Doc, it should say anyone with the link can view. Otherwise, you're going to get a gross window that says request access or permission not granted. So that's a big issue with especially grade 6 students. I really had to talk them through how to change the sharing settings. And also actually for us yesterday, I sent our presentation to my sister, who's not part of the GNSPES kind of family, and she looked through it, and there was a few links that we ended up changing because they weren't working for people outside of GNSPES. So our plans was to host family and friends this year for student-led conferences in April. That was canceled. But some of our students still finished it, and parents and other family members filled out a feedback form, and they were really impressed with our kids' technology skills. Now, I would highly recommend setting time limits for students to work on content and design. So when we first started these portfolios, I literally set them in groups. They had a little light on their table, and we went step by step. And every time they completed a step, they turned on the light. And they were really keen to help each other because they knew once the setup was done, the rest of the class was for them to explore and design their website. If I hadn't given them the time to design and just said, okay, these steps need to be completed, and you can design it however you want, they would spend 5 hours on designing and 5 minutes on the content that should be on there.
Okay. Now to look at another example. Okay, so a little bit of background information. Our middle school serves grades 6 to 8 from 6 feeder schools in the West Hants area. Each year, the grade 5 students from all 6 elementary schools take part in a variety of transition activities to help them get ready to move to the big school. We are a much bigger school than our elementaries. Not only is this a change in school routines for them, but it is literally a sizable change. With over 24 homerooms, over 70 staff, and almost 600 students, moving from their much smaller schools is an enormous change for them, not to mention the difference in routines. So we work hard to ensure they feel as prepared as possible when September comes. Since we weren't able to hold any of our regular transition visits this year, we had to do some things online, and we have one of our grade 5 principals in here. So, we did some online visits, but it still wasn't the same in terms of getting to see things and getting to meet people. So our administrators came up with some tools to help students feel acquainted with the building. And Nika and I were planning to create a video to introduce our grade 6 staff and to answer some commonly asked questions. However, as plans grew, and we were very fortunate, you'll see on the site when I show you around, we ended up with lots of options for tours, etc. A lot of things are being sent to the elementary schools and to the families. And so we decided to create, instead of a video, a website on Google Sites, because it was a great platform for us to use, nice and user-friendly for us to use and for people to work around. And it would become a one-stop shop for all that information they needed. So we found that throughout this process, and this is what we say for transitions, not just specifically this one, this would be helpful for any student who is new to our school. And in fact, it was just sent out the other night to students of all 3 grades. Because anyone who, has been away from school a little bit and is maybe wanting to touch base again or is completely new to our school would find this helpful. And with some changes to the site, this could be used year after year for grade 6 or slightly redeveloped for the whole school. So for any new student or any student moving to another grade. So if you work at a school where some sort of transition is a big deal, this may be a helpful idea for you, or even grade to grade within your school. You can kind of take the idea and use it how you want. But in essence, we've created a place for our new students to experience our middle school transition without having actually been on campus yet. I'm going to show you around the site to show you the kinds of things that we have. So we start, of course, with links to the main site and the orientation handbook that was created this year because, again, we weren't there in person. So there's a lot of information right off the bat, but if they want to see some more specific things, they can go to virtual tours where, again, big school, one of the major anxieties for our kids is that coming in is they're worried they're going to get lost. Grade 6 is in this wing here, the one shorter wing, both floors, but there are some places they need to go elsewhere and they get a little worried. So we have this here so that they can take a look at, see how it all works when they get their homeroom number. Our principal narrated a video tour going through the school to show them what it looks like. We have one of those real estate 3D tours done that they can click through. We're just waiting for it to come, and some aerial photos so they can see the playground and whatnot. So that is going to be really helpful. Some kids are going to go back to that again and again. So that was one helpful thing. We've included a page for all our staff. So when they find out who their homeroom teacher is, they can see our grade 6 administrator. And then when they find out who their teacher is, they can find their team and get to know them a little bit, not like in person, but here we are, woohoo, dream team. But you know, it goes a long way to try to figure out who your people are, to see the friendly face, get to know their name, even just one little thing about us, so that when we meet in person, we have that little bit of connection. Their specialist teachers and resource teachers are here. So we also found that doing this as a site versus a video, they can go back to specific parts that they want again and again without having to, scroll through the whole thing. We have sections with some common questions because there are going to be a lot of questions. And so these were just some things they might want to know, like how to use a schedule, what they need for phys ed, just different details about the school. They've heard of homework list and dances, so explaining that. Middle school tips, another major anxiety for kids coming to our school is the fact that they will have lockers and locks. So we've included some resources for how to use that. For us, this is what we knew would help our students. But again, if you were doing this, you think, okay, for the people I'm creating this for, what are they going to be looking for? And then we have because we have all of our students in grade 6 are new to our school. A lot of the families are new to our school. We've just created a handy little form for them to send in questions during the summer if they want to, so they don't have to go searching for email addresses. It'll just come right to us to answer. We have some guidance resources from our guidance counselor for those who would like a little bit more help or emotional support preparing for middle school. There's a lot here, so I'm not going to scroll through it all, but you can check it out later. And then a gallery of some of the things we've done in grade 6, so they can see, what does it look like when I'm actually there. So that is our transition site in brief. But again, you have the link to the website. The PowerPoint presentation or slides presentation is on there, and you can access all of our examples through that. The next one that I'm going to show you, this is a project from one of my grade 6 social studies classes. Culture is a major theme in our curriculum. So we had a lot of discussions about culture, especially how it relates to community, different types of culture, how culture impacts us, what it looks like in our communities. And so for a final culminating project to show what we know, I developed this with my students as an opportunity to explore their own community and what the elements of culture we talked about look like in their own community. So for those who may not know, students at our school come from over 50 different smaller communities. And so I had a couple repeats in each class, but for the most part, there were several or many different communities being explored. So this was a great opportunity for them to take what we learned and personalize it. One of the options they asked for as a way to share their information was to create a website. So a number of students made these, and I have one example to show you. This girl, she lives in Eller's house. So she put a little bit of information here. She linked the Google map so that you can go right to it and see where it's situated. We had determined a number of criteria that needed to be included based on what we learned. But just some examples, you know, the expressions of culture. What does that look like in your community in terms of hobbies? So there's a little bit of information there. Stories that have been told through the community and that are related to buildings you might see in the community. Pop culture was one kind of culture, and of course they're loving pop culture in grade 6. That was their favorite to talk about. So she included some articles that Eller's House was mentioned in, and a couple movies, TV shows that were filmed in part there. And then because this was done as also a language arts project, I teach the two very in an integrated way. We had gone through how to do a research project, how to share information, how to write information for sharing. And one of the things that we were also focused on was, if you're going and looking for information, you need to keep track of that, where you got the information, because if you're telling me something that you didn't come up with, I need to know who did. And so there was a place for bibliography. This is one of our criteria. So what this did was it allowed everything to be broken up into little pieces and organized nicely. The next one that I'm going to show you is reading blogs. I've used reading blogs in my classes for several years, and I really enjoyed the Kid Blog platform when it was free. But since then, since they added the paywall, I've been trying other avenues, and I didn't really love any of them until I tried Google Sites this year, and it was the glass slipper. We started working with this by looking at a variety of blogs, talking about, what are some common features we can identify. Let's explore some layouts for our content. So it became a language arts writing activity also. And then we determined what types of criteria ours would need to have, and students were given time to create their layout. For this example that I'll show you a little bit around, in previous years, my students were eager to write in their blogs, and they did so fairly independently. They wanted to go write in them at home or take whatever time they had in the classroom to do it. This year, I found they enjoyed it, but they weren't as independent with it. So you'll see there isn't a ton because I ended up having to integrate this into our literacy rotations that we did, and so that they would have a specific time to do it. And that was working, but we started that in early March, and we all know what happened mid-March. So unfortunately, the example isn't complete, but I'll show you how it's set up and how it should work. One of the common layouts people chose for the front is, what I'm reading, what I want to. So they've seen books in the classroom that they know they want to read, and they mark them down there to remember, and things I have read. And so when I am going to this site to look at their work and to assess them, I'm looking at things I have read and things I am reading, and I'm going to look up here to find information about that. So she started writing this while she was reading these, and she started to do these entries about it. But again, she had she would have had one literacy rotation session to work on that since or before we ended up on e-learning. So this was something they could continue, and some did work a little bit more with it, but again, they weren't running to it independently, so they didn't end up finished, but I did find that it worked really well in class. Over to you, Nika.
All right, so this is a website I created with another grade 6 teacher, Kathy Babcock, and I do have permission to share this with you all. She really wanted a resource bank of basic math facts, and I had this plan of creating a website with games and resources for every grade 6 math unit, so we kind of combined our ideas. It's one of those websites that's never completely done. We're always going to be working on it. We're always going to be updating it, but it became really handy, especially these past few months of learning at home, because we had been using it all year, so it wasn't a surprise to the kids when I said, go explore Unit 8 on our grade 6 math website. So at the top, you'll see the outcomes and the indicators. And I just recently noticed that Google Sites now has collapsible text boxes. So at some point in August, I'm going to sit down and change all of those, because really the students, they don't care about reading the indicators, most of them, but it's for other teachers and for parents that might be looking at the site. But the students would be going further down. They would be looking at the videos, the games, and the websites that touch on or cover the outcomes above. And so I have it there for all units. I have started a grade 7 one as well, but for now it's just the grade 6 one that's finished-ish. I really like this site. It's always listed on our homework agenda page to supplement what we do in the classroom. It's something that I also often refer parents to when they ask what we're working on or what they could be helping with. It's also good for sub-activities. And if we ever have like a few minutes left at the end of a class, I kind of just bring up a couple of those games. I don't need to dig through my bookmarks trying to find a game. I have them all there in units. Steph, before I move on with that one, I'm just going to answer the question that just came up. It says, you're showing multiple sites. Does that mean we can develop many sites under one GNSPES account? Yes, you can.
Absolutely.
It is unlimited. You can make as many as you want.
And students can too.
Yeah. So for our grade 6 solar system unit, we do one big project, but there are a few bits and pieces that I couldn't fit into the actual project. So that's where this site came, where I came up with this site. So it's just basically bits and pieces that meet some of the indicators for that unit. And the kids work through this independently. So they can do these tasks in any order. I have containers set up for each task. So some of these things are hands-on, some of them are things, some of them are online, some of them are offline, but all the instructions are on this website. And while they're working on this, I have time to sit down with my kids one-on-one and kind of go through how they're making out with their major project that they're working on. If I do ever have a group that can't work independently, each task could essentially be one lesson. And it can also be easily adapted. So for example, I had a couple students that needed a reduced workload, so some of them only worked on the odd number tasks. So on the home page here, task 1, the Oreo task is everyone's absolute favorite. I don't think we're gonna get away with working in groups and licking cookies this coming school year though, so I'm gonna have to come up with something different. But for example, task 3, I asked them to watch a few different videos on lunar and solar eclipses. And then they had to send me an email about the difference between a lunar and solar eclipse, and then they create a little art piece. So a lot of these things I'm still going to be able to do next year. I was a little bummed this spring that I left my 2 major hands-on units for the end of the year. This year, if we were to go back to e-learning or some sort of blended learning, this is going to be my go-to science unit because most of it is already online. So with a few tweaks, I can make the whole thing online. And the good thing about Google Sites, just like docs and slides, you can actually make a copy of an entire website, so you're not losing your original. And then I could change it so that it's all online. Yeah, I'm going to give you the link right now. I'm going to post it again. So the question was, is there a link to the presentation? I'm going to post it again in the chat box.
The link, and you may be thinking the link is taking you to the website, but the slideshow is actually embedded in the website.
Yeah, it's right on the home page.
That's where I'm presenting from.
There. All right, so this next one, I created a master's course. I love Breakout EDU kits. For those of you that don't know, they're kind of little suitcases with locks on them. The kids have to solve clues to break into them. They do take, I find, a lot of work to set up. Even if you have like all your clues from the previous year, just kind of fiddling around with the locks and making them match your clues takes a long time. So I've created this online Breakout EDU, and all of the clues are on one site, and they work through, they start at the top, clue 1, that takes them to clue 2, and so on. So you only have to set it up once, and then in future years, you may just have to set your check your links, make sure they're all still working. But basically, they solve clue 1, they get to clue 2 to clue 3, and so on. And at the very end, in this case, they get to leave Math Island. They're not stuck there.
Okay, another use for Google Slides, share tab, is as a presentation tool, much as we would use PowerPoint or slides presentation. So here I'm showing you the front page of our website that we have made for this presentation. This is what your short URL from the chat box will bring you to. And as you can see, we've embedded our slides presentation right into the middle. So I am presenting from this. This is where I have this open from. But when I need to, I can easily click to any of the other sections. And when we give you our presentation, we're giving you a link to a website with not just our slide deck, but also some other things. So for example, the helpful resources. And these are things that may help you with creating a site or helping your students create sites in the future. Ideas and feedback, and we'll be visiting this page later for a couple different things. And contact information. So if you wanted to ask us a question later that you thought of after the presentation, or you weren't comfortable putting it in the chat box, you can come and fill out the form or email us or find my Twitter account here on this page. I have in the past and probably will again do, a slides or PowerPoint presentation, and they may also have a site or some other platform that I'm using. But sometimes it just makes sense to have it all in one happy little package here, and this is a great way to do it because you can embed things that will play and run in real time. If I hit play, my slideshow is going to start moving. But of course, if I wanted, I can make it bigger and go click by click. So that is another use that we found for this. This next example, is there a question?
Nope.
Oh, I thought I heard your beautiful voice for a split second there. So this is an example of an activity from a school event I developed called the Coding Olympics. All the students were in their house teams. They were divided up into groups within those teams to accomplish a set of tasks and compete against each other for house points. So there were various digital tasks they were completing. One of them they were asked to do was to create a Google site about their house team name and some details about our school. And so this is an example that the Red Auroras did. They included some information about auroras, and of course they were given a list of criteria that the judges would be using. So they have some information about what auroras are, what they look like, and then they start talking about, what made our house unique. So, they have someone's name there. They had to link the school website and say who the other teams were. This was a great way for us to get them using a new tool and to do it's a very mini research project, finding information and sharing this information. But it combined it all. They were able to do that and do it digitally on something that was user-friendly enough that for a lot of them, this was their first time making a site, and they did splendidly. This group chose to put everything on the the main page. Some of them had little tabs with something different on each page. They were more elaborate. Each was a little different. And of course, that's where the judging came into play. But I just wanted to show you this as it was an activity. It was a competition activity, and for fun. And the other piece is that this is showing how user-friendly it was, because it was, like I said, brand new to most of these kids. And we took feedback from that event, and I wanted to know how they found things, and they said that they enjoyed it and they found it great to use this. So you just wanted to show you that as proof that that your kids can use it.
So I called this a virtual study hall. I set this up for my grade 7s a few years ago. For those of you that have taught statistics at any point, you know there's a lot of vocabulary. So I wanted kind of a fun way for them to review it. So it's a one-page website. And rather than just typing out the definitions for all of the different vocabulary, I used AVRCE, where you can upload a photo and make the mouth move. So I think Steph just clicked on it. There it is.
I don't know the rhyme. I don't know the riddle. I am the median. I'm in the middle.
Okay, so it's just a fun way to review the unit, and that could work really for any subject. I have videos on there. I have some games on there. Like I said, the definitions are on there. There's flashcards, and at the very bottom, there's a little quiz for them to kind of get an idea of how much more they need to study these terms or review them. This next one is a grade 6 collaborative project. So I set up this website. I put the instructions on the home page, and then I listed all the different types of adaptations. The kids were partnered up, they chose an adaptation, and they had to create the content and a game or a quiz for their content. It's kind of to teach each other about their adaptation. So we had a big talk beforehand about copying and pasting information from other sites and listing sources. And also, it was neat to see, I was on the website at the same time that they were in draft form, and you can see what kids are typing. There's a little colored frame around the text box, and the kid's name is on it, so you know who's typing what, unless they're using each other's Chromes. One thing that you can do in slides or docs is comment directly on pieces on the website. So in a Google slide, I could highlight specific things and comment on it, and you can't do that in a Google Sites. However, there's probably loads of different extensions on there that I just haven't found yet that would make this work. Also, this is a big one. It wasn't an issue a few years ago, but it's an issue, or was an issue this year. I had a number of grade 6 students working in groups. They were all on a different page on the same website, and they did not click insert text box. So they just started typing, and it showed up on all of the different pages of that website. So it showed up on color and camouflage and sound, and it's because they did not click insert text box. And it took us 2 hours to figure out, because of course, grade 6 students, they all thought they were doing it to each other on purpose, and they weren't. But it types in the header or the footer when you just start typing. So a big key thing is here that you need to click insert text box before you start typing anything. And you may not know right now, if you're not familiar with Google Sites, what that looks like. But once you start working on it, be warned, it might happen to you and your students. I also have a big talk with them beforehand when we're working on these collaborative projects about changing the theme. So when I set up the website, my kids are not allowed to change the theme. They can change the pictures on their specific pages, but they can't change the overall theme of the whole website, because otherwise I'm going to have 20-something kids trying to change the theme, and all you can see is different colors flashing across your screen. So when it's their own website, they can design it themselves, but when I set it up, when it's a collaborative project for the whole class, they don't get to change the theme or the color. I always also go through at the end of the year if there were any sites that I published that had kids' names on it. Most of the times, first names only or only initials, but I usually go through and unpublish them. And some of them I don't even publish, actually. All right, so this last example is, this is how I submitted my coursework for a master's course. And it's kind of a great way. So all my artifacts, everything that I did for this course, I posted on this one website. It's kind of like a big folder, except a little more organized. And then all I did was I sent the link to the website to the prof that was marking it. So all of those examples are in that on that website link in the slideshow. I believe it's slide 4. Yeah. You can go in time, you can click on them. If you get to a piece that you can't see, if it's asking you to request access, that's kind of one of the limitations. We have to go back in and give you access. And that often happens with websites when you create them, that either the publication settings need to be adjusted or things that you embedded on the website, they need to be adjusted. So some of the lessons that we learned along the way, there were many. We could have done a whole new presentation on this, but these were kind of the key ones. So I have this rule that I often use with kids when we're working on technology. It's 3 before me. So they have to ask 3 of their classmates before they can ask me a question. And that works well. And it also, you can see who the go-to people are for the kids. And it's really interesting listening to the conversations. And when they do come to me, oftentimes I just end up Googling it, because it's okay not to know a lot of these answers, especially when we're trying out a new technology. I may have played around with it a little bit beforehand, but oftentimes I end up Googling it too. I also mentioned earlier that you need to click on insert text box, otherwise you're writing on all of the pages. The next thing that we noticed just recently is that you can't change the font unless you know coding or HTML. We even tried writing it in a Google Doc in a different color and copying and pasting it in, and it did not work. And then the next one, and I've seen in the chat box, we will get to your questions, and this might clear up some of the things. So when you're inserting a Google Doc, a slides, or a form, you need to set the appropriate viewing privileges. So if you have it set that only your classmates, like certain people in your class, can see it, or only GNSPES, then anybody that's outside of that would not be able to see it on the website. And it's the same with the publication settings. So if we had published our short URL so that only people from GNSPES can see it, then those of you that don't have a GNSPES account, you would not be able to see it. There is a privacy concern kind of for names and work if you're publishing it. So I always ask my kids only to use first name or initials, or sometimes we don't even publish the actual websites. Like I mentioned earlier, unlike Google Doc and Slides, doesn't actually have a chat feature, so you could get around it with using Google Meet or chat. And I also mentioned earlier that you want to make sure that you give them time to play around and explore with the design, but not at the cost of doing content. So kind of set separate times aside for both. And finally, when you first tell students that they're going to be creating their own website, it seems like a really long and challenging project, but the platform is so user-friendly and fun that I think the students will get the hang of this really quickly and realize that it's actually not a really challenging project.
Okay, so we shared a number of fully developed ideas with you. We are idea generating machines. When we came into our meet before everyone got here, we actually came up with another idea. we just love to throw those ideas around. And so we came up with some other ones that may be helpful. We may use, but we thought it may also be helpful for anyone looking for ideas. So I'm I'm not going to go into too much detail on this now because we want to give you some time to add your thoughts. Some ideas were science fair prep, big deal at our school, like many, and we have the kids we have a whole unit to help them prepare, learn how to do a science fair project. And instead of doing it on paper with our files being in a file on Google, we thought, well, we could put the whole thing on a Google site. We could be presenting from there when we do our lessons, but then the students have access to it the whole time they're working on it, right? You could do a virtual art gallery of student work or a curation type activity. A how-to site for procedural writing. So, for example, say we had a lot of kids that really love hockey in our class. So this tends to be my example. But you might have student says, "Oh, I'm really, really great at hockey. I know a lot about that. I'm going to make my how-to site about how to play hockey." So one page is some hockey terms that you might not know. One page is the rules, basic rules of the game. One page is videos of them teaching you how to do different shots and explaining. So how-to site is something that they might do. If you have an athletic program at your school, you may want to have a site where everything is all in one place for student athletes and families. You can use it as a dashboard to organize bookmarks and favorite websites. Symbaloo and Wakelet are great apps for this, but if you wanted something a little different, similar to what Nika did for her master's project, you could be keeping something for yourself, even unpublished, and just having it in the pre-published phase, where you put your link and then you put a little reflection beside it about what you used it for, which activity or video from that site you used for which lesson or concept you were teaching. Could be a school newspaper, since multiple people can contribute to it. You can have a student leadership group or student newspaper group creating from there. Winter Carnival, big deal at our school. Sign up for all of our students. It's quite an elaborate process, and we've been kind of tinkering with the idea of finding a way to do it through a site. The idea's there, the layout's there. It's more the sign up, the technicalities of that, but it is possible, because I did it for another event, that you can have things divided up into your different activities and have signups happening through there. Or a photo gallery, which could be a visual portfolio. It could be a yearbook for students at your school or in your class. But we know you've been sitting here listening to us talk for quite a while, and you're probably bubbling over with your own ideas. So we want to give you a chance to share those with each other. We have created a Padlet that you will find on our website at that short URL that was put in the chat box. And I am going to show you where to find that. So when you click on or paste that short URL, you come to our homepage. You're going to go to Ideas and Feedback along the top. Click on that. When you come down here, it looks like plank flooring. That's just the background. It's called Idea Share. Click on that, and that will bring you to the Padlet. I've created an example here. You hit the plus button and you can start writing, or you can upload a picture or any sort of thing. And so I put as the title, I put photo gallery, and then I put some details about how I think it might work. We can comment on each other's if you have questions or an idea to add to it. If it's something you really like, you can let them know by clicking on that. Yeah, so we're going to give you a few moments to share, and as I see things come up, I will sort of narrate to an extent. It's like absolutely a school site, and it could absolutely link to pages for each teacher or someone's own site. If you're having trouble finding your way to the Padlet, just let us know in the chat box. So remember, if you want to add something, you just click the little plus sign. It's in a pink circle there. You click on it and you can start typing.
So there was just a question that came up. I'm just going to quickly interrupt about sharing settings. So you can share your draft when you're building it or editing it just with a certain number of students or with the whole class. And then you can publish to either just those students, like you can restrict it to just certain students, or you can do it to all of GNSPES, or you can do it for like public so anyone can view it. So there's kind of, on the Google Sites, there's two different things where you need to check your sharing settings. There's the draft version and then your published version.
The draft version, the sharing settings, just to put it in context, works a lot like docs and sheets and slides. Curriculum night. Oh, okay, this could be interesting. Appears to be a great alternative. I don't know how you're ending that sentence yet, but I say yes, I have found it as a great alternative to a number of other things I was doing. To Google Classrooms. In a lot of contexts, I have heard this. And the other thing you can do is have your Google Classroom be the place where work is handed in to get it to you, because I just find it a nice, clean way to have work handed in without filling up my inbox. But you could do everything on your site and then just post a link to the spot where they hand it on Classroom. So you're really only updating your site for the most part. That is, if that works better for you, definitely. Teacher communication plan. Submitting, whereas in, yes. And even if it's not published, students can share it with their parents, just like they would with a doc or anything like that. And they can also, what our students were doing in their student portfolios that we used for student-led, they linked the sites that they made and talked about them. And because we had done portfolios on this platform, they were able to share them even though we weren't in school at the end of the year. Which you may have already mentioned, Nika. Sorry. Research. Loving it. I'm just going to give another moment, but don't panic if you're in the middle of typing something or an idea is brewing. This is open. This is staying open. You can access it anytime.
Yeah, we will be reading examples, and we're going to add them there. Well, they're on the website, so you can go in later too and see what other people have posted. I'm sorry, I know slow Wi-Fi is very annoying. That's why I'm sitting in the lunchroom next to the router. And I don't really have any suggestions about Google Sites when the Wi-Fi is limited. My only issue that I have is that sometimes the embedded slides or docs take a long time popping up. So maybe if you are working with limited Wi-Fi, you may not want to embed those.
Okay. So again, if you are still typing, that's okay. Don't panic. You can be listening to us still. If you want to go add something after, you can. If you want to read them after, you can. It's staying open. I'm just recognizing we have 9 minutes left and we want to have a little bit more time for questions. So we're just going to get through our last couple slides and do some answering of questions.
Yeah, so the great thing about Google is that they're constantly updating their apps and coming up with new features and extensions. So this is just kind of a short list of features that I recently noticed. They may have been there for a while, I noticed them recently. So now I'm going to go back and kind of update my older Google Sites and put those collapsible text boxes in and buttons for links and have like picture carousels up. So those are just things that I noticed recently. They may have been there for a while. So we do love Google Sites. but we also wanted to show you an alternative. Some of you may have heard of Hyperdocs before. So we basically used a template to create a one-page project write-up that is organized and really easy to follow. It's in a chart. This may be an option for you if you don't want to necessarily publish something online like the Google Sites, or just like the one-page write-up, because it can also be saved as a PDF or printed. You just wouldn't be able to click on the links. It's basically a website just on one page. So this particular example was a 2-week project on COVID-19 and involved numerous subjects. There was math, health, ELA, art, ICT, and so on. It's set up in 3 sections. So there's explore, apply, and reflect. And in each section, the kids could work on those tasks in any order. So they could work on in any order in the explore, and then would move on to apply and could do those in any order. On the right-hand side are all the resources that they would need. So sometimes it was just linked to previous work, and sometimes it was to introduce a whole new topic. So all the blue highlighted parts are links to other websites or Google Docs or Google Slides that had instructions for them. We didn't create this chart. We found the template on hyperdocs.co and just modified it a bit. And during the e-learning time, every 2 weeks, our project looked the same. It had the same chart that said explore, apply, and reflect. It just was based on a different topic, and we changed the color and the pictures in it, and obviously the links. So Steph just opened up one of the templates on hyperdocs.co, and the link for it is on the Google Slides. So this is actually the template that we modified.
Oh, I was trying to load another one. Basically, there are a number of different ones.
Yeah. So when you click on them, they automatically open in a Google Doc, and then you can just save them to wherever you want on your Google Drive. So this is just an alternative to a Google Site. So it's kind of like a web page just on one site, or it's a website just on one page.
So that if that's what works for you or for your students, you can take all of the ideas that you've gained here and all of the concepts that we've worked with and then put it onto one page. Just another little idea for you.
Steph mentioned this earlier on our website, and I'm just going to post the short URL again. We did add some helpful resources that we used with our students. So there's some how-to videos and tutorials, and there are also 2 links for lesson plans. So there are lesson plans that incorporate using or creating Google Sites, and it's for a variety of subjects and grade levels. So you may want to go and check that out as well.